interfaces. Unit 2, next half of the unit 2 portions is interfaces. Interface. What is interface? In order to work with the class, you need to understand the public methods, that is methods, return types. After to initiate, what can you do with it? The implementation details are fully relevant to using the class. You don't have to know how the things are done inside the class. Interfaces. A Java interface is a collection of abstract methods and constants. So this is the pure definition of interfaces. A Java interface is a collection of abstract methods and constants. An abstract method is a method header without a method body. Method is a method header without a method body. An abstract method that can be declared using the modifier abstract, but because all the methods in an interface are abstract, it is left off. An interface is used to establish a set of methods that a class will implement. So this is the example. Interface. Here interface is a reserved keyword. It's a reserved word. So public interface double. In between the open and close curly braces, you have to giving public void do this function, and public in integer do that function, and public void do this too. We are passing the parameters over here, value, float data type, character in a character data type. So public boolean do the other. So the parameter we are passing is only one parameter, is a number in a integer, data type is a integer. So here there is no semicolon, here there is a semicolon here, it is immediately follows each method header. So the main point is the semicolon here. A semicolon immediately follows each method header. And another one important point is none of the methods in an interface are given a definition, that is body of the definition. Interfaces. An interface that cannot be instantiated. Methods in an interface have public visibility by default. A class formally implements an interface by first point stating the so in the class header, and also it providing implementations for each abstract method in the interface. If a class asserts that it implements an interface, it must define all methods in the interface. In this example, public class can do implements robot. So public implements is a reserved word here. Okay, this is here we are using the reserved word implements. In public void do this function, so we can given whatever the parameters functions what we need here. As far as the public void do that function, so each method it's listed as a double is given a definition. So totally void do this function as well as do that function. So totally we are using two methods over here. A class that implements an interface that can implement other methods as well, in addition to or instead of abstract methods. An interface that can contain constants. When a class implements an interface, it gains access to all its constants. Comparison with inheritance. Interfaces don't define any method actions. You need to fill in all the details. It essentially just gives a basic collection of method names, not a strict hierarchy. The important points here is it can implement several interfaces as well as can use this to fake multiple inheritance. A class that can implement multiple interfaces. A class must implement all methods in all interfaces listed in the header. Class many things implements interface 1, interface 2. So totally we are using the two number of interfaces. So the method we are passing over these interfaces. So we can able to pass a n number of methods. So all methods of both interfaces, for both interface 1 and interface 2. Example, the comparable interface. Any class can implement comparable to provide a mechanism for comparing objects of that type. Specifically, implementing comparable means that you need a method compared to. For example, if object 1 compared to object 2, okay, object 1 compared to object 2 less than 0 means the system.out.println object 1 is less than object 2. The comparable interface continuation, it's up to the programmer to determine what makes one object less than another. For example, you may define the compare to method of an employee class to order employees by name alphabetically or by the employee number. The implementation of the method that can be as straightforward or as complex as needed for the situation. Requiring interfaces. Interface names can be used like class names in the parameters passed to a method. For example, public boolean is less, it is comparable with a comma comparable b. It return a dot compare to of b, okay, which is less than 0. Any class that implements comparable that can be used for the arguments to this particular method. Interfaces in UML. Interfaces are easy to spot in class diagrams. So consider, we look on interface, so comparable. It implements a dotted line, open arrowhead. So in teacher we are passing over this for making comparable operation here. Interface, you could write a class that implements certain methods such as compare to without formally implementing the interface, that is comparable. However, formally establishing the relationship between a class and an interface, it allows a Java to deal with an object in certain ways. Interfaces are a key aspect of object-oriented design in Java. Built-in interfaces. The Java standard library includes lots more built-in interfaces. They are listed in the API, that is application programming interfaces, with the respective classes. For example, clonable. Clonable is a method. It implements clone method. And next one is the formatable, that can be formatted with printf statement. The iterator interface, as we discussed in the earlier chapter, an iterator is an object that can provide a means of processing a collection of objects one at a time. An iterator is created formally by implementing the iterator interface, which contains 3 methods. The has next method returns a boolean result if it is true, if there are items that is left to the process, and the next method that returns the next object in the iteration. And the third one is a removal method, the remove method, which removes the object most recently returned by the next method. So these are all the 3 kinds of methods of the iterator interface. By implementing the iterator interface, a class normally establishes that object of that type or iterators. The programmer must decide how best to implement the iterator functions. Once it has been established, the for each version of the for loop that can be used to process the items in the iterator.